Welcome back to Stocklabs, another market recap. We are almost done with the first quarter already. Just about done with March in another week or so. And it was another pretty bullish week for markets. So everything went smoothly for the most part. I think the NASDAQ was up every day. Most of the indices were up most of the days. Until Friday, there was a little bit of weakness kind of in the Dow and the Russell, but for the most part, everything was fine. So for the week, we had S&P up 1.9%, pretty big week. Qs up 1.65%, not too bad. Mostly that erased the prior week's losses. I mean, these two indices are kind of hanging out near highs, so nothing is really that big of a deal. Same thing with the Dow. Dow was up 1.7%, and IWM finished the week down 0.8. It was slightly green up until Friday, and then Friday was sort of a modest down day, 1.3% to the downside. I mean, Russell has lagged for more or less ever. Not to be too funny about it, but the gains for the, what you call the stock market, they come from the larger companies. So S&P, Qs, they have the cap weight concentrations. So those have been going higher. Those companies have been doing well. Russell, kind of whatever. Um, you know, and bonds had a bad week, down 1.8%. There's sort of a little bit of a stealth re-acceleration of inflation taking place. Actually, you'll notice that crude oil was the top performing ETF this week out of this list, up 4.5%. So crude is now up 15% for the year. That's better than any index. And, it might start to pressure inflation expectations, which is going to make the Fed get nervous again, which is going to make stocks get nervous again. So keep an eye on this crude trade. It has some pretty good momentum behind it now. After coming off the lows in the end of, from the end of, or from January or the end of January, somewhere around there. The last kind of swing low was, early February. And it's sort of been on just a pretty uninterrupted uptrend since then. So we'll see. Driving season's coming up in a couple months. So if crude's already breaking out, I mean, it's just going to be another catalyst that comes through. If we look at the leadership stocks, they all did pretty well this week, with the exception of Tesla. Tesla was down 2.5%. And it's kind of, playing around with this 170 level on the stock. I don't know if that's that important, but it has sort of, declines have stopped here and sort of stabilized a little bit, but any up moves have come right back here. So we'll see how that plays out. Top performer, Google, big up week. Google has been getting smacked around. I've talked about this in the past. They sort of had their earnings were not great, and then they had some botched AI stuff with Bard and Gemini and whatever. Basically, they're making a hash out of their AI sort of presentation so far. Although CEO met with Apple, and Apple is going to somehow maybe integrate Gemini with iOS. I mean, I don't know. It sounded kind of vague to me, but yeah, it's kind of hard to imagine that Google has missed the boat on AI. I mean, I think they wrote the white paper, or they invented TensorFlow, which is like major machine learning open source product now, but Google's sort of been in this game for a while. I don't know how they're sort of dropping the ball on making something consumer facing that's good. Anyway, Nvidia up 7%, kind of getting close to 1,000. Maybe it'll probably hit it. Soon-ish. Microsoft also up 5.5% this week. Not many people talking about Microsoft, but Microsoft has sneakily been sort of the most reliable of these stocks as far as the AI stuff, even from going back when these stocks were all drawing down. This, I think, is a new high, close to this 430 level for Microsoft. They have the OpenAI partnership, blah, blah, blah. They're going to make a lot of money off of that. In the meantime, before OpenAI even probably gets to collect a penny off of whatever they're doing. Amazon also up 2%, having a pretty good year after sort of lagging for a while, but, I think the marketplace stuff is kind of, no one's really following it for that, but AWS, and also they are developing AI products, obviously. So, Amazon looks pretty well positioned. Apple up 1% on the week, but still down 10% on the year. It's not really, I don't know what the story is here. I mean, they're saying iPhone demand, they're saying this, they're saying that, but investors are kind of vacating Apple. Could just be to diversify into other, pick your favorite $1 trillion company, because they're buying all the other ones. Meta also up 0.7, up 40% for the year already, and doesn't look like anything is stopping Zuckerberg, even though they kind of had him dead to rights back at the end of 22 or whenever it was. Yeah, 22. Under $100. Stock basically up like 400% since then. So yeah. That's it for the big guys. Pretty good week overall, the exception of Tesla. And yeah, I mean, hard for the market to go down when you got this going on. We've got our industries, and this past week, sort of mixed on the breadth side. Utilities down, technology down 1.2%, services flat, healthcare underperformer down 3%, industrials up 2%, financials flat, consumer flat, basic materials up 2%. So, more or less a mixed-ish week for the market overall. It's kind of interesting. The NASDAQ was up pretty big, but technology as a whole was the complete opposite direction, down 1.2% on a median basis. So median tech stock wasn't up. And if we look at top performers, subsector-wise, you see they're concentrated in sort of, well, let's exclude cannabis. Don't really know what was going on here, but this is a loser sector. And the rest were sort of, you see materials, you see oil and gas, blah, blah, blah. These sorts of stocks have been the ones outperforming. So we'll see if there's some sort of a rotation, or a more forceful rotation out of tech and into those sorts of things. Although the NASDAQ keeps pressing higher as well anyway. So maybe it doesn't, nobody cares about anything. On the downside, not really a whole lot to talk about here. We've got a couple semiconductor we've got specialized semiconductors here. One of the losers, EV loser. I mentioned Tesla was down. Solar kind of is a cousin or sibling of EVs, also down. 3D printing, kind of just momentum tech down. Drugs down, and whatever. You got some random stuff. But overall, it's pretty balanced between stuff that was up a decent amount, stuff that was down a decent amount. You could see across the top that, some sectors up, some sectors down. It is what it is, kind of normal week of people trading. So if we look at the breadth by market cap and get rid of, okay, 1 to 5 billion, up 3/10. So not that strong, but stronger than the Russell, which was down 8/10, like we said. 5 to 10 billion, up 94 basis points. That's a pretty good week. You know, nothing to complain about. 10 to 50 billion, up 1.13%. 50 to 100 billion, up almost 2%, really strong. 100 billion plus, up 1.25%. So again, strong. Breadth overall looks pretty good, especially at the higher end of the cap ranges. I've talked about this also in the past. Generally, or at least in the last, let's say, 1.5 years, you've been safer or you've done pretty well. Just if you only picked stocks that were over maybe $50 billion market cap and just sat in them, then you didn't really worry about too many drawdowns. You kind of just went with the flow the whole time. So, there's definitely a preference for larger capped companies in this market. It could be like a higher rates sort of phenomenon. More well capitalized companies, their equity is going to be worth more or whatever. But that's sort of just what's been playing out for a while now. So no reason to deviate from that at the moment. Intelligence for the coming week, not too much on here. We've got a couple. Okay, Ethereum. I'm going to ignore this one because this trust has sort of something going on with it that, it's selling for some reason and it's due to the ETFs that came out or whatever. I didn't really follow any of that stuff, but since I know it, something in the background like idiosyncratic is going on, I'm just going to ignore this. And okay, ultra short silver is bullish. We've got cloud computing is bullish, and financials are bullish. So take your pick from cloud, and financials should do pretty well this week. And on the downside, oil, okay, natural gas, kind of perennial loser, like we've always said. Biotech is bearish. Healthcare and biotech had a bad week last week. Stocklabs kind of looking for that to maybe continue this week. Tesla Bear ETF is bearish, so Tesla maybe going to bounce this week. And real estate bull ETF is bearish, so bearish real estate. And ultra Russell is bearish, so bearish Russell for this coming week. Overall, I mean, trend looks pretty stable. Actually, you can see on 3-month, if we're using 3-month sample data, we're kind of close to being oversold here, even though market's kind of just pressing highs every day, or at least every few days we're making new highs. We're kind of in the midpoint if we look at like a 6-month sample period, and 12-month sort of same thing as the 6-month. But yeah, I mean, overall, market's stable. There's nothing really that bad that anyone can point at. Economy is basically just plugging along. Actually, it never weakened the way people were expecting to. I know people are thinking the Fed's going to cut rates. I'm not seeing it. With the economy sort of just hanging in, labor market's fine. There's no you're not seeing any big spikes in unemployment, nothing like that. So, I mean, Fed will sort of talk its talk, but I don't see them really changing any course of action really this year from where they are, or even maybe into next year either. So, I think you can kind of just ignore the Fed until 2025, maybe, unless something dramatic happens. You get a big spike in inflation or something, like I mentioned with the crude thing earlier. So yeah, that's enough for me for now. Overall, this week, I think you're looking at a pretty bullish week. And yeah, so have fun out there. Talk to you later. Bye.